Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. This is my spooky Reddit series. Today we are doing part 4 of the neighbours next door are weird, and we left you off with Jack has just got to Greg's house after sending the kids away and he wants to speak to Marina. So let's get stuck in and see what happens when he speaks to Marina. Greg looked lost, his easygoing demeanour faltering. "All right," he muttered, calling into the house. "Marina, Jack is here." She appeared a moment later, her expression turning serious as soon as she saw me. What happened? I took a shaky breath, stepping past Greg into their entryway. "It's the neighbours. I saw them out this morning, in broad daylight, with my kids." Marina's face drained of colour. "They were out during the day?" Her gaze darted to Greg, who still looked lost, then back at me. "Tell me everything." I nodded, recounting the whole thing. The walk home, what I saw in the neighbour's window, finding Evan and Lily missing, running through the empty house, the moment I saw them standing there with the neighbours, the unnatural smiles, the way their hair didn't move in the wind. I tried to keep it together, but my voice wavered as the details spilled out. Marina's eyes widened with each word. She seemed to absorb every detail. Greg, on the other hand, looked more sceptical by the second, rubbing his neck and shaking his head. Finally, he cut in. "Hold up. You're seriously freaked out because you saw the neighbours standing in their own yard?" I clenched my fist, trying to hold my frustration in check. "Greg, they were with my kids. They were giving them things, gifts, like they'd been expecting them. Something's wrong with them. You'd know it if you saw them." Greg sighed, folding his arms. "Look, man, they're just neighbours. Weird, sure, but to be freaking out at this extent, it's a bit much, don't you think?" Marina's gaze snapped to him. "Greg, listen to what he's saying. This isn't just weird. Something's wrong here. When have you ever seen them outside during the day or interacting with anyone?" Greg rolled his eyes. "They're reclusive, so what? Lots of people like their privacy." I felt the desperation clawing at my throat. "Greg, this isn't just about privacy. They looked wrong, like they weren't even real. And they've been outside at night talking strange, disjointed things that don't make sense. Ever since I moved in, I'm not imagining this." Greg exhaled loudly, clearly frustrated. "Look, maybe you guys are reading too much into this. Sometimes people just don't fit into the mould, alright? It doesn't make them monsters." Marina touched his arm, her voice soft but firm. "Greg, I know this sounds..." Marina touched his arm, her voice soft but firm. "Greg, I know how this sounds, but he's not the first one to notice something strange about them." She looked back at me, eyes narrowed. "What do you mean I'm not the first?" I looked at Marina, then at Greg, confused. Greg shifted uncomfortably, sinking deeper into the couch. "Marina, come on, don't scare him more than he is already. It was a coincidence, an accident, happened ages ago." But Marina didn't back down. She kept her eyes on me, her expression dead serious. Marina shot Greg a look, her eyes sharp. "Coincidence, my ass," she muttered, folding her arms and fixing her gaze on me. "Listen, you're not the first one to see things, or hear them, or lose sleep because of them." Greg sighed, shaking his head, but he didn't argue. I felt a chill creeping up my spine. "What do you mean? Has this happened to other people around here?" Marina glanced at Greg, and for a second it looked like she was debating whether or not to continue. She leaned in close, dropping her voice as if the neighbours might somehow hear us. Marina hesitated, eyes flicking to Greg before meeting mine again. Her voice was low, deliberate. "There was someone that lived in that house before you. Divorced, 2 kids, just like you. He went missing for a while, weeks. No one had a clue where he was, and then they found him. It was out in the woods behind the neighbourhood, caught up in old barbed wire, like he'd gotten himself tangled somehow. They called it an accident." Greg groaned, sitting upright. "Here we go. It was an accident. The guy was probably drunk, wandering around in the middle of the night. It happens, Marina." She ignored him, leaning closer to me. But here's the thing. His shoes were missing, gone, and his nails, they were torn up like he'd been clawing at something. They said he must have gotten disoriented, but to me it looked like he was trying to get away from something. Greg threw his arms up, exasperated. For God's sake, Marina, stop trying to turn this into some ghost story. He slipped, it was dark, and he got caught in the wire. No conspiracy, no shadowy figures, just a freak accident. Marina's expression darkened, her voice steady. There was more to it, Greg, and you know it. Greg shot me a frustrated look. You two really must be bored if you're turning this into some Nancy Drew investigation. Honestly, you think this neighbourhood is hiding some sinister plot? Get a grip. Marina glanced at him with barely veiled frustration, then turned to me. Jack, it's late, you should go, but... She leaned in quickly, slipping a piece of paper into my hand with a time and a location scribbled on it. Meet me tomorrow. Greg didn't seem to notice, already sinking back into the couch, muttering under his breath. As I left, I caught Marina's gaze, her expression saying everything Greg wouldn't. The next day I found myself at the spot Marina had scribbled on that piece of paper. A quiet corner of the park, hidden behind a row of trees. I arrived a few minutes early, scanning my surroundings, half expecting Marina not to show. But then there she was, moving quickly, glancing over her shoulder as if making sure she wasn't followed. She looked different here, away from Greg's watchful eye, more serious, a tension in her face that I hadn't seen before. Thanks for meeting me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I needed to talk to you without Greg around. I nodded, unsure where to start. So, about the man who went missing. She exhaled, looking at the ground, then back up at me. I don't think it was an accident. Greg acts like it's all in my head, but he wasn't there that night when the police showed up. I was. I saw how they looked, shaken. One of them even said under his breath that it didn't add up. But they had to close it fast. Close it? I echoed, feeling a chill creep up my spine. Yeah, she said, her eyes narrowing. They wanted it off the books. Said it was an unfortunate accident and left it at that. But I knew the man. He was careful, quiet. Not someone to stumble around into the woods in the middle of the night. Her voice dropped lower. And then there's the other thing. The way his body was found. My stomach tightened. The barbed wire? She nodded. I checked out that area after they found him. There's no way he would have got that far into the woods alone. Not without someone seeing or hearing him. It was as if he'd been placed there. Like someone wanted him to be found, but made it look just off enough to leave us questioning. The wind rustled through the trees, a reminder of just how isolated we were. And Greg, why is he so against even thinking something's wrong? Marina hesitated. Greg, he's not a bad guy, Jack. He doesn't want to see it. He moved us here for a quiet life, and anything that disrupts that, he shuts it out. To him, it's easier to believe there's no mystery, no danger, just normal life, she sighed. But something's wrong here, Jack. I can feel it. And I think you do too. I swallowed, nodding. Yeah, I do. Marina glanced over her shoulder, her voice dropping even lower. I've been doing some digging on the house next to yours. I'll tell you what I found, if you're ready for it. After the accident, she began, keeping her voice low, I found out that multiple people that have lived in that house before you have disappeared. No one knows where they went, just gone. They were barely mentioned after they left. But I looked up property records. Every 5 or 6 years that house sits empty and someone else moves in. It's a cycle, and each time something happens, they vanish or they leave in the middle of the night without so much as a word to anyone. I felt my jaw tighten. Images from the past week flickering in my mind. The strange voices, Evan and Lily in the neighbour's yard, that chilling smile from the couple next door. So it's happened multiple times? I asked, my voice sounding hollow. Marina nodded. And each time the same thing. The neighbours. They're always described as the same. No one really knows anything about them. It's like they're there, and then they're not. I swallowed, feeling a sinking dread settle over me. Why hasn't anyone reported this or said anything? Marina looked back towards the path, tension written all over her face. Someone does, sometimes. But those complaints go missing too. Records just vanish like they were never filed. And then there's people like Greg. He's not the only one who wants to keep his head down. They'd rather call it a coincidence, even if it means ignoring the warning signs. I shook my head and sat down on a bench behind us. You're the only one who'll talk to me about this, she whispered. Ever since I brought up the disappearances, people avoid me. Greg keeps telling me it's all in my head, that I need to move on. She paused, her hands clenching. It's like they've made me into this kind of villain here. They won't even let their kids near mine. My kids don't have friends in this neighbourhood. Parents tell their kids I'm crazy. I felt a cold shiver as she spoke. You mean you're the only one who's been reporting everything? Her face hardened. Yeah, the only one. I tried calling the police, bringing it up at the community meeting. Greg told them I was having a breakdown. The other neighbours agreed, even helped him have me committed for observation a few months ago. They treated me like a threat for asking questions. Her gaze turned far away like she was staring through the walls into something only she could see. It's like they know what's going on, Jack. They just won't admit it. Like they're all living in some twisted denial, pretending nothing's wrong. She looked away, her voice cracking. I thought I was going crazy. They've all made me doubt myself. The only thing that kept me sane was that I know something's wrong. I know it. My stomach twisted as I tried to process her words. Why would they want to hide it? Why would they go to that length? I don't know, she said, looking at me with eyes that were dark and heavy. But they know. I see it in her eye. But they know it. I see it in their eyes, in the way they look at the house. It's like they're all in on something, and I'm the outlier. The only one. The one they have to keep quiet. She took a deep breath, a hand gripping her wrist like she was holding herself together. I couldn't shake the image of Marina alone in that hospital, treated like a pariah by people who seemed perfectly happy to ignore the truth, or whatever it was they feared. Her words lingered in the air between us, thick with a feeling I couldn't name. Marina, are you okay? Are you in any danger? I asked, half expecting her to say yes, half expecting her to say no and deny it. I knew she was. I'm okay. The only thing that puts me in danger is my undeniable belief that something is going on. If Greg is what you mean, I'm safe with him. He won't hurt me, he's just stubborn. She started to walk away, then suddenly turned around. I want you to go to the neighbours' door tonight if they aren't already outside. Try and talk to them. I'll meet you at your house tonight at midnight. I have a camera. We'll record everything, okay? She finished off with a wave goodbye and headed home. I paused outside my own front door, taking a deep breath. I walked in and sat on the couch, staring at the clock, awaiting the gates of hell to open at midnight. Okay, that is the latest update. That was 5 days ago. I'm hoping that we have something new soon. This person is a fantastic writer, and I am so invested in this. I cannot wait to see what happens that night whenever he goes to the neighbour's door. I can't believe Marina's asking him to do this. Is Marina involved with them? Something doesn't seem quite right about Marina. Anyway, that's it for today. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.